Hate crimes have skyrocketed over 53% the last decade, but the headlines don't tell the full story. To understand this crisis, we have to unearth the true cost of color, the human price that statistics can never show you. Data can't tell you about the sleepless nights. It can't describe the shattered sense of safety or the profound grief for the empty seat at the dinner table. Numbers can chart a trend, but they can't show you the tremor in a mother's hand as she identifies her son's body. They can't capture the silence that falls over a community when a house of worship is desecrated, or the way a child learns to fear the world because of the color of their skin. A number is an abstraction. It's clean, sterile, and distant, but the reality it represents is anything but. It is visceral, it is devastating, and it is deeply human. The story of racial crime in America isn't just about statistics. It's about the people who become those statistics. It's about the lives irrevocably altered by acts of hatred. This is the story of the true cost of color. To understand the depth of this crisis, you have to look at the data, as cold as it may be. In 2024 alone, law enforcement agencies across the United States reported 11,679 hate crime incidents. Of those, more than half, a staggering 53%, were motivated by a bias against the victim's race, ethnicity, or ancestry. Think about that. Over 6,000 times in a single year, someone was targeted for a crime not because of anything they'd done, but simply for who they are. And while some headlines in 2025 celebrated a general downturn in violent crime, the specific poison of hate-motivated crime persists with a terrifying tenacity. While total hate crime incidents did see a slight dip from 2023 to 2024, the 10-year trend is unambiguous and alarming. Crimes motivated by race, ethnicity, or ancestry are 87% higher than they were a decade ago. This isn't a statistical blip. It's a foundational shift in the landscape of American violence. The offenses range from intimidation, which accounts for 38% of cases, to simple assault and property destruction. But they also include the most heinous acts imaginable: arson, robbery, and murder. The most common biases fueling these attacks are anti-black, anti-Jewish, and anti-gay male. Between 2015 and 2024, reported anti-black hate crimes alone surged by 81%. This isn't a relic of a bygone era. It is a clear and present danger. Yet, even these shocking figures tell only part of the story. The truth is, the official data from the FBI represents only the tip of a very large and very cold iceberg. There's a vast, dark space between the crimes that happen and the crimes that get counted. This is the problem of underreporting. The Bureau of Justice Statistics estimates that as many as 56% of all hate crimes are never reported to the police. Some victims fear retaliation. Others, particularly in immigrant communities, may distrust law enforcement. Nina Timony, a Muslim Arab American who survived a hate crime, described this terrifying choice, initially seeing the FBI as the enemy based on experiences from her country of origin, before ultimately deciding she had to use the system to protect her children. Still others find that when they do summon the courage to report, their experiences are dismissed or misclassified. An investigation by the News 21 Initiative found that between 2012 and 2016, over 2 million crimes were committed where victims suspected they were targeted by hate, a number that dwarfs the official FBI tally. The gap is staggering. What's more, according to a statement on the FBI's 2024 data, a shocking 81% of participating law enforcement agencies reported zero hate crimes, including at least 57 cities with populations over 100,000. This doesn't mean hate is absent in those communities. It just means it isn't being counted. This chronic undercounting does more than just skew statistics. It erases the victim's reality. It invalidates their trauma. It sends a message that this kind of violence doesn't matter, or worse, that it didn't really happen. It poisons a relationship between communities and the law enforcement sworn to protect them, fostering an environment where fear and distrust fester. When a crime motivated by hate isn't named as such, its unique and corrosive impact is ignored. Because a hate crime is fundamentally different. It isn't just an attack on a person. It is an attack on an idea, an attack on identity, an attack on an entire community. For the people who live through this, the statistics aren't an abstraction. They are a painful, lived reality. This is the story of one of those people. Behind these numbers are names, faces, and families. This is the story of the Chun family. They are not a statistic. They are a father, a mother, and 2 children who moved to a quiet suburban neighborhood, seeking what every family wants: a safe place to grow, good schools, and a sense of belonging. For a few years, they found it. Their children made friends. They joined the local community association. They were, in every sense of the word, home. Then one Tuesday, that feeling of home was shattered. Mrs. Chun. It started small, or what felt small at the time. A comment from a neighbor I'd never spoken before. I was getting the mail, and he was walking his dog. He just looked at me and said, "When are you people going back where you came from?" I was stunned, just frozen. I didn't even know what to say. I just took my mail and went inside, my heart pounding. I told my husband, Ken, and he said to ignore it. "He's just an ignorant man," he said. "Don't give him the power." So I tried. I really did. But then a week later, we found a drawing taped to our front door. It was a caricature, a hateful, racist drawing of an Asian face with exaggerated, slanted eyes, and underneath the same words, "Go back." This time it felt different. It was on our home, our sanctuary. My daughter, who was 9 at the time, saw it before I could take it down. She asked me, "Mommy, why do they hate us?" How do you answer that question? How do you explain to your child that someone hates her because of the shape of her eyes, the eyes she inherited from you? We called the police. An officer came, took a report, but he was, I don't know, dismissive? He called it kids being stupid. He said, "It's probably just a prank, ma'am. Try not to worry." But it wasn't a prank. It was a threat. And we were worried. We were terrified. The nights became the hardest part. Every creak of the floorboards, every car that slowed down on our street. My heart would leap into my throat. I couldn't sleep. I would just lie there, staring at the ceiling, listening for the sound of a window breaking, or worse. I started sleeping in my daughter's room, just so I could be near her. Ken installed more locks, a new camera system. Our home, which used to be our safe place, started to feel like a fortress, a prison. The final act came about a month after that first comment. We woke up at 2 a.m. to the smell of smoke. The front of our garage was on fire. Someone had thrown a container of gasoline against the door and lit it. The fire department got there quickly, and thank God, no one was hurt. The fire didn't spread to the house, but the damage was done. Not to the garage. That could be repaired. The damage was done to us. Standing on the lawn in our pajamas, watching the firefighters work, I looked at my children's faces. The fear, it was so absolute. I saw my son, only 12, holding his sister, trying to be brave, but his whole body was shaking. And in that moment, I knew we couldn't stay. The house wasn't a home anymore. It was a target. We were targets. We moved 2 months later. We lost money on the house, selling it so quickly. We left a community we had tried so hard to be a part of. My children had to change schools, leave their friends. We never told our new neighbors why we moved. We were too ashamed, too scared. It feels like you failed, you know? Like you couldn't protect your family. The man who started it all, the neighbor with the dog, they never proved it was him. There was no evidence. The police said, just suspicion. But we know. Every time I close my eyes, I see his face. It's been 3 years. We live in a new town, a new house. But we are not the same. I still have trouble sleeping. My daughter has nightmares. My son is quiet now, and there's an anger in him that wasn't there before. The fire was put out, but the hate burned its way inside of us. And that's a fire you can't extinguish. The story of the Chun family isn't unique. It's a story that echoes in communities across the nation. A hate crime is never just a single act. It's a message designed to instill fear, to tell an entire group of people that they aren't welcome, that they aren't safe, that they are less than. For the Chens, it was a slur, then graffiti, then arson. It was a deliberate, escalating campaign of terror. And the psychological wounds inflicted are far deeper and longer lasting than any physical damage. People who experience hate crimes are far more likely to suffer from severe psychological distress. including higher rates of depression, anxiety, and PTSD, compared to victims of similar crimes that weren't motivated by bias. One study found that young adults who frequently face discrimination are twice as likely to develop severe psychological distress. It's a trauma that attacks the very core of your identity. You're a target for something you can't change. The color of your skin, your ancestry, the faith you practice. This creates a profound sense of helplessness. Victims often ask themselves the same agonizing question Vilma Carey, a 65-year-old Filipino immigrant brutally attacked in New York, asked her daughter, "What did I do?" The answer, of course, is nothing. And that's the most terrifying part of all. To confront this rising tide of hatred, we have to understand where it comes from. Why has there been such a staggering increase in racially motivated crimes? The answer is complex, woven from the threads of history, social psychology, and the political currents of our time. It's not a new phenomenon, but an old poison finding new ways to infect our society. To help us understand, we spoke with Dr. Evelyn Reed, a sociologist who has spent her career studying extremist movements. Dr. Evelyn Reed, what we're seeing is a perfect storm of several powerful forces. On one hand, you have long-term economic and social anxieties. Globalization led to job displacement, particularly for people without a college education. This creates a fertile ground for grievance. When people feel insecure and their sense of place in the world is threatened, they become more susceptible to stories that provide a simple, tangible scapegoat for their problems. This is where a dangerous social process called negative polarization comes in. It's an us versus them mentality, amplified to an extreme. Political and media figures can exploit these anxieties by framing complex problems as the fault of a specific group, immigrants, racial minorities, and so on. This othering process is a defensive psychological mechanism. It provides a seemingly logical explanation for frightening social changes, but in doing so, it legitimizes prejudice and dehumanizes the targeted group. The internet and social media have been a massive accelerant for this. 30 years ago, someone with extremist views might have been isolated. Today, they can go online and instantly find a community of thousands who share and validate their beliefs. Online forums and encrypted chat apps become echo chambers where false narratives, like conspiracy theories about replacement, are reinforced until they're accepted as truth. These digital spaces allow for the rapid radicalization of individuals, especially young people who are more susceptible to these powerful ideologies. And we must be clear, hate crimes are not typically the result of mental illness. The driving force is prejudice. Sociologists Jack McDevitt and Jack Levin identified several motivations for hate offenders. The most common is thrill-seeking. These are often young people, in groups, looking for excitement and a sense of power in tormenting others. Then there are defensive offenders, who commit crimes because they think they're protecting their community from outsiders. And finally, you have mission offenders. These are the most dangerous. The ideologically driven extremists who believe they're on a crusade to rid the world of a group they deem inferior. What connects all of them is the belief that their actions are justified. They don't see themselves as criminals. They see themselves as warriors or defenders. This sense of justification is what makes this type of violence so intractable and so dangerous. This sense of grievance and perceived threat isn't born in a vacuum. It's nurtured by a selective and often distorted reading of history. Dr. David Carter, a historian specializing in American race relations, explains how the past is weaponized to fuel present-day hate. Dr. David Carter. There's a direct line from the unresolved traumas of American history to the hate crimes we see today. Every era of racial progress in this country has been met with a violent backlash. After the Civil War and Reconstruction, we saw the rise of the Ku Klux Klan and Jim Crow. The civil rights movement of the 50s and 60s was met with bombings, assassinations, and brutal violence. The murder of 14-year-old Emmett Till in 1955 for allegedly offending a white woman became a catalyst of the movement, precisely because his mother's decision to have an open casket funeral exposed the sheer barbarism of racial violence to the world. That violence was a tool used to maintain a racial hierarchy. Today, we see echoes of that backlash. As our society becomes more diverse, And as conversations about systemic racism become more mainstream, a segment of the population perceive this as a threat to their status and identity. They're being fed a narrative of loss, a story that their country is being taken from them. This narrative often invokes a sanitized, mythological version of the American past, a past that never truly existed for most of its citizens. Hate groups are incredibly adept at co-opting historical symbols and twisting them to serve their ideology. They recast historical figures to fit a narrative of white grievance. This isn't just about the past. It's about creating a historical mandate for present-day action. By claiming they are the true inheritors of a betrayed legacy, they give their followers a sense of righteous purpose. The violence they commit is, in their minds, not an act of hate, but an act of restoration, of taking back what they believe is rightfully theirs. You can't understand the surge in modern hate crimes without understanding the long, painful, and often unacknowledged history of racial violence in America. The theories of experts find their proof in the stories of those who have been targeted. For Marcus Williams, a black father too living in a small Midwestern town, the us versus the mentality Dr. Reed described wasn't an academic concept. It was the reason his son was put in the hospital. Marcus Williams. My son, Jamal, is a good kid, 16 years old, loves basketball, plays video games, gets decent grades. He's just a regular teenager. One Friday night, he was walking home from his friend's house, maybe half a mile from our home, a walk he's done 100 times. This time, a truck pulled up beside him. For young white men inside, none of them much older than him, they started yelling slurs at him, the N-word, telling him he didn't belong in their town. Jamal did what we taught him to do. He ignored them, kept his head down, and walked faster. But they got out of the truck. They beat him so badly he had a broken rib, a concussion, and his left eye was swollen shut for a week. They just left him there on the side of the road. He managed to call me, and I will never forget the sound of his voice. The way he kept saying, "Dad, I'm sorry," apologizing, as if he had done something wrong. When the police caught them, and to their credit, they did catch them, thanks to a neighbor's security camera, the kids confessed almost immediately. They said they had been drinking and talking about how people like him were ruining the country. They saw my son, a black kid walking alone at night, and in their minds, he wasn't a person. He was a symbol of everything they thought was wrong with the world. During the court proceedings, one of their fathers stood up and said they were good boys who made a stupid mistake. A stupid mistake. My son had to have 2 surgeries on his eye. He missed a month of school. He's afraid to walk outside after dark. He looks over his shoulder constantly. That's not a stupid mistake. That is a crime born from a poison that has been fed to them their whole lives. They saw my son not as a 16-year-old kid, but as a threat. They weren't just attacking him. They were attacking what he represented to them. And that's a sickness that I don't know how to fight. A hate crime never claims just one victim. Its impact radiates outward, like the shockwave from an explosion, sending tremors of fear through entire communities. An act of vandalism on a synagogue is felt by every Jewish family in the city. A violent assault on a transgender person sends a terrifying message to the entire LGBTQ+ community. A threat leveled against one family makes every family that looks like them feel a little less safe. Hate crimes are unique in this way. They're designed to terrorize not just individual, but the group they belong to. When a hate crime occurs, it tears at the fabric of a community. It breeds suspicion and destroys trust. It can make neighbors look at each other with fear instead of friendship. It can silence the vibrant life of a neighborhood, forcing people behind locked doors. We spoke to Maria Rodriguez, a community organizer in a predominantly Latino neighborhood that experienced a string of racially motivated incidents. Maria Rodriguez. For months, it felt like we were under siege. It started with graffiti, swastikas, and anti-immigrant slurs spray-painted on local businesses. Then cars were keyed. People were getting shouted at on the street, told to speak English or go home. The fear was palpable. People stopped letting their kids play outside in the evenings. The local park, which was always full of families, became quiet, almost empty. Business owners were scared. It's not just the cost of repairing a smashed window. It's the message it sends. It says, "This place is not safe. It tells people to stay away. I saw families who had built their businesses for generations talking about selling, about leaving. The most insidious thing about hate is how it isolates you. People were afraid to talk about it openly at first. They felt ashamed, or they were afraid that speaking up would make them the next target. It creates this heavy, suffocating silence. My job as an organizer was to break that silence, to remind people that we weren't alone, and that our strength was in our unity. We had to show the people doing this that they couldn't intimidate us. They couldn't break us. We organized community meetings. We started neighborhood watch patrols, not to be vigilantes, but just to be visible, to show that we were looking out for each other. We brought in legal aid groups to help people understand their rights. But it was a long, hard fight to reclaim that sense of safety. And for some, that sense never fully comes back. The psychic scar remains. An entire community was victimized, and that kind of collective trauma takes a generation to heal. This isn't just a feeling. Psychologists call it vicarious trauma. Research shows that members of a targeted community can experience symptoms of anxiety and fear just by hearing about others being victimized. It validates the feeling that your world is hostile and dangerous. The psychological toll extends far beyond the immediate victim, creating a climate of fear that can lead to public health consequences, like increased rates of anxiety, depression, and even physical ailments linked to chronic stress. The attack on an individual becomes an attack on a collective sense of place, their sense of belonging, and their right to exist peacefully. This is the ultimate goal of hate, to make a group feel so unwelcome and unsafe that they retreat, disappear, or leave. It's a form of social and psychological warfare, waged not on a battlefield, but in our neighborhoods, on our streets, and against our homes. And its wounds are carried not just by individuals, but by entire communities. In the face of such deep-seated hatred, it's easy to feel helpless. The scale of the problem can seem overwhelming, the roots of the prejudice too deep to pull. But surrendering to that despair is a victory for those who spread hate. The antidote to hate isn't silence or fear. It's action. It's solidarity. It's an unwavering commitment to building a society where the cost of color is nothing at all. The path forward isn't one simple road, but a network of strategies that involve law enforcement, government, communities, and individuals. First, we have to address the data problem. We can't fight what we can't accurately measure. This means a real push for mandatory, standardized hate crime reporting from all law enforcement agencies. It demands better training for officers to help them recognize the signs of a bias-motivated crime. When law enforcement takes these crimes seriously, investigates them thoroughly, and names them for what they are, it sends a powerful message. These acts will not be tolerated. But law enforcement alone isn't the solution. The most powerful responses often come from the ground up. The organization Not in Our Town provides a model for this, encouraging residents to visibly and swiftly respond to acts of hate. This can mean organizing a rally to support a family, holding a town hall meeting to foster dialogue, or creating a crew to immediately paint over hateful graffiti. These acts, small and large, reclaim the public space and send a clear message that an attack on one is an attack on all. Education is perhaps the most crucial long-term tool. Prejudice is learned, and so it can be unlearned. School programs that teach tolerance, diversity, and the history of civil rights are essential for inoculating the next generation against the ideologies of hate. These lessons can be reinforced at home by parents who commit to having difficult conversations with their children about race and justice. And for each of us, as individuals, there's a role to play. The first step is to educate yourself. Seek out the stories and histories of communities different from your own. Support organizations on the front lines, groups like the Southern Poverty Law Center, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, Asian Americans Advancing Justice, and the Anti-Defamation League, which work to monitor hate groups, advocate for victims, and promote tolerance. Don't be a bystander. If you witness a hate incident, and it's safe to do so, speak up. If you can't intervene directly, document the event, and most importantly, offer support to the person being targeted. A small act of kindness can be a powerful antidote to the poison of hate. Support victims. If a hate crime happens in your community, reach out. Let them know they're not alone. A letter, a phone call, or just showing up to a supportive gathering can help break the cycle of fear and isolation that hate crimes are designed to create. Finally, use your voice. Demand that your elected officials take this issue seriously. Advocate for stronger hate crime laws, better data collection, and investment in community-based prevention programs. Vote for leaders who seek to unite us, not divide us. The fight against racial hatred is a marathon, not a sprint. It's the persistent daily work of building empathy, fostering understanding, and defending the fundamental principle that every person has a right to live in safety and with dignity. The statistics are a warning. They're a measure of the fever gripping our nation. But the stories of the victims and the resilience of the communities that support them are a source of hope. They remind us of profound human cost of prejudice, but they also illuminate the path forward, a path paved with courage, compassion, and unshakable belief in our shared humanity. The cost of color has been far too high, for far too long. The work of building a more just America belongs to all of us. The question isn't whether we can afford to do it, but whether we can afford not to.